Mankind likes to believe that there are no monsters, that we have always ruled the world. It is not so. You ever see anything like this, Vic? Detective Vic Ricardo looked at his partner with one eyebrow raised. Dwayne Collins looked like a former football player going soft in his middle age. He had big shoulders, a bald head, and dark skin. His gray suit was nicely tailored, but it couldn't quite hide his beer gut. His tie was a cheap clip-on. "Not since yesterday, Dwayne," Vic deadpanned. Vic was a fit guy with a face a mother couldn't love. He looked like he'd been hit with a shovel every day since he was born. A big flat forehead, a crooked nose, and beady little eyes. His thinning hair had grown into a comb-over that wasn't fooling anyone, and his mustache bristled like an angry caterpillar. He wore cheap black tweed that somehow managed to be rumpled within 10 minutes of putting it on. He wore a bow tie that utterly failed to make him look respectable. The bow tie was a cheap clip-on as well. "You know what I mean," Dwayne chided. His nose wrinkled as he leaned over one of the bodies. "I've been in a homicide for 12 years. Ain't seen nothing like this." Nothing like it was right. The victim was a Hispanic male, late teens or early 20s. He'd been a tall, skinny kid. Vic noted his hair had been carefully styled, and his goatee was meticulously groomed. The kid fancied himself a ladies' man. His clothes were nicer than Vic expected. There were still track pants and a tank top, but they were the pricey high-end brand. The kid's eyes were open. His expression was one of pain and horror. Vic didn't blame him. Both the victim's arms had been removed. By hand, if Vic was to guess. Vic wouldn't get an official cause of death until forensics finished and the medical examiner did an autopsy. But Vic didn't need a report to tell him the chest cavity had been ripped open and the heart and lungs had been removed. Their pulped remains were a few feet from the corpse. The kid hadn't been dead long, a few hours maybe. He hadn't gone down without a fight either. There was a cheap .38 next to one of the dismembered arms, the old Saturday night special. The gun had been fired. Vic could smell the cordite under the death smells of shit and blood. The kid wasn't the only victim. The apartment had once held a family of 5. The shorter, skinnier teenager was holding a second revolver 6 feet away. At least Vic thought it was a teenager. He couldn't be sure. The victim's head had been squished like a ripe tomato. There was an older couple in the kitchen. The female's head had been swatted off her body. The male had been folded in half, backwards. The little girl was the worst. She was in the closet of her mother's bedroom. Something had wrung her torso like a dish rag. "I mean, what the hell could do this to a person?" Dwayne continued. "A gorilla on PCP?" Vic gave a non-committal grunt. He took a look around the apartment. It was run down, 2-bedroom affair with bars on the windows. Detroit had some nice areas, but it wasn't one of them. The building was covered in graffiti, and the halls were littered with trash and needles. The apartment itself was clean enough, or at least it used to be. There was a lot of blood. Some of it wasn't dried yet. The forensics crew moved carefully around it, trying not to muck up the evidence as pictures and samples were taken. Vic saw bloody footprints leading out of the apartment. Weird footprints. Whatever had made them was foot-shaped, but perfectly flat. No shoe treads, no toes, some kind of specialty footwear, maybe? There were bloody handprints on the victims, all over the scene, really. They wouldn't do Vic any good. No fingerprints. This was the 3rd attack in as many nights, and forensics hadn't found shit. Canvassing the neighborhood hadn't done any good either. Most of the people around here didn't talk to cops, and the few that did didn't know a damn thing. Vic could try asking around again in the morning, but he didn't expect much. "That's gotta be it, right?" Dwayne mused. "Gorillas on PCP." "PCP gorillas?" Vic gave his partner a dubious look. "How are you a detective?" Dwayne shrugged. "I know which asses to kiss." He frowned down at the victim with the open chest cavity. That's another one of Tuco's boys. I think we're going to have to talk to him again. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be real helpful this time, said Vic. All 3 attacks had involved at least one member of Tuco's gang. Tuco was a small player in the drug scene, pharmaceuticals mostly. He didn't have a line on the hard stuff. He did have a nasty reputation. His crew had dropped off a dozen bodies in the last 2 years. Vic had put a few of his boys away, but he hadn't been able to pin anything on the man himself. Probably not, Dwayne admitted. The guy's an asshole, but somebody's targeting his crew. Taking out whole families isn't usually how business is done. He might be pissed enough to give us something. I hope so, said Vic. We've got nothing over here. He took one last look over the scene. He frowned at the bloody footprints leading out the door. He already tried following them, but the prints stopped in the middle of the street in front of the building. The perp had either driven off himself or been picked up. Vic shook his head. Screw this. I'm going back to bed. We'll pick this up in the morning. Trying to get your beauty sleep? Dwayne smirked. I got bad news, Vic. I don't think it's going to help. Screw you, said Vic. I'll see you in the morning. Several hours and a fitful sleep later, Vic and Dwayne were at the station. They had paperwork to do and forensic reports to go through. It was tedious, and they didn't find anything useful, but detective work was like that. Canvassing came next. The apartment building was full of folks who didn't like cops, but Vic was used to it. The apartment next to the crime scene had an elderly couple, the same 2 that had called the police in the first place. They'd heard the screams and the gunfire, but they hadn't got a good look at the perpetrator. No one had. At least, no one who was willing to talk to Vic. After a few frustrating hours of asking around, Vic and Dwayne decided to pay Tuco a visit. Tuco operated out of a tattoo shop about 6 blocks from the last crime scene. It was a ratty little place. The tattoo shop didn't see a lot of legitimate business, but that was fine. The real business went on outside of it. 3 of Tuco's crew were hanging around outside the entrance. All of them were packing. One of them called out a warning as Vic and Dwayne pulled up. Pill bottles and plastic baggies were swiftly dumped into the nearest trash can. Vic and Dwayne parked. Dwayne said, "At ease, boys." They sauntered past the thugs and went inside. The interior of the tattoo shop was just as ratty as the outside. A pair of inked-up thugs were chilling on their phones. One of them sat up as Vic walked in. "What do you want?" the thug asked. "We're here to talk to Tuco," Vic told him. The punk scowled. "You got a warrant?" "We don't need a warrant," Dwayne told him. "This is a place of business, isn't it?" "We got the right to refuse service to anybody," the thug pointed out. "If you ain't got a warrant, get out." He went back to playing on his phone. "Tuco ain't here anyway." "Yeah, he is," Dwayne told him. "Look, Danny, just tell Tuco we're here. He's gonna want to talk to us." Danny scowled harder. "Tuco don't talk to cops." "He will today," Vic told him. "It's about Diego." Danny paled. "Fine, I'll text him." He typed into his phone, then went back to glaring at Dwayne. His phone beeped. He looked at it, then grimaced. "Right this way, officers." Danny led the detectives into a back room. Tuco was there with 3 others. They were sitting around a small table, playing cards. Tuco was average height, but his shoulders were so broad it made him look shorter. He had a shaved head and a long goatee. Tuco wore jeans, a red tank top, and a necklace with thick gold cross. He was covered in tattoos. He wasn't packing, but Vic guessed he'd had a pistol in his waistband a minute ago. "Well, hello there, officers," Tuco said amiably. Sharp eyes honed in on Vic. "Danny says you're here about Diego." "We are," said Dwayne. "You know what happened?" "I heard," said Tuco. "You come to offer condolences?" "Something like that," said Vic. "That's the 3rd one of your boys in 3 nights. Someone's gunning for you, and I want to know who it is." "Since when do you care?" asked Tuco. "The only time I see you is when you're trying to put my people away. Ain't we all just scum to you?" "You might be," Vic admitted. He grimaced. "If it was just you and your soldiers, I wouldn't be losing any sleep." He leaned closer, narrowing his eyes. But it ain't just you. Whoever this prick is, he's killing whole families, civilians, old ladies, kids. Vic let a hint of cold fury flow into his voice. I'm not having it. I want his ass. Tuco sized up Vic for a moment. Then he turned and said something in Spanish. Danny and the other 3 thugs cleared out. Tuco waited for a few moments, then said, All right, detectives, let's talk. Really? Dwayne looked at the man incredulously. Just like that? Just like that, said the gang leader. Now it was Tuco's turn to lean forward. His eyes glittered. You say you want this guy, but I want him more. The problem is none of us have all the pieces. So you give me what you got, and I'll give you what I got, and we'll see if we can't find this pendejo. You really can't expect us to share details of an investigation, said Dwayne. Not on purpose, Tuco told him, but you will. Every question you ask is going to tell me something. That's the only reason we're talking right now. His cold, dead eyes shifted back to an amused smirk as he leaned back in his chair. So, you got questions. Go ahead and ask. Vic and Dwayne exchanged a look. Dwayne shrugged. Vic asked, There anyone you've got beef with? Someone who can hire outside help, maybe? Nope, said Tuco. We had a tussle with Danzig's crew over corners a few weeks ago, but that shit's resolved. Besides, any crew had muscle to do this shit, they'd be shouting it from the rooftops. A new player, maybe? Dwayne asked. Someone looking to make a name? No, Tuco denied. Ain't no one been sniffing around. How sure are you? Vic asked. Oh, I'm sure. Tuco's eyes narrowed dangerously. I haven't been sitting on my ass the last 3 days. We've been looking hard. Anyone knew something? They'd have talked already. Vic nodded. It matched his own findings. Massacring families was bad for business. There weren't many players that would go that route, and the few that did wouldn't do so quietly. Hell, none of this should be as quiet as it has been. Reputation was a big thing in the drug trade. Rumors are running wild, but there weren't names attached to any of the buzz. It was abnormal. You think it's personal. Vengeance, detective, Tuco confirmed. It's gotta be. Only problem is, I don't know who or for what, or how, neither. He leaned back further, putting his feet on the table and tucking his hands behind his head. Word is, there weren't no guns. They say he killed my people with just his hands. That true? Hell if we know, Vic admitted. Ain't seen nothing like it. Someone literally ripped those people apart, Dwayne confirmed. Didn't look like something a human could do. Tuco nodded. Any of my boys get a shot off? Vic and Dwayne exchanged another look. The victims had, in fact, used guns, or tried to. Forensics couldn't find all the bullets. Vic's guess was the perp had been hit, but there was no blood on the scene that didn't belong to the victims. We're not telling you that, said Dwayne. So they did, Tuco nodded. And it didn't do nothing. He squinted at Dwayne. And you don't know why, do you? What do you mean, why? Vic asked. Body armor's not a new concept, Tuco. Nah, it ain't new, said Tuco. But you didn't find all the bullets, did you? Caught in Kevlar, probably, said Dwayne. I don't think so, said the gang leader. Tuco took his feet off the table and sat up. You Catholic, detective? Baptist, said Dwayne. But you believe in demons, right? Tuco asked. You think the demon's out killing your people? Vic didn't bother keeping the derision out of his voice. That's the thing about you cops, said Tuco. Even when you believe, you don't believe. But me, I know better. He ran a finger over the cross on his necklace. Something's killed Diego. Something too strong to be a man. Something that don't bleed when you shoot it. That's ridiculous, said Vic. Is it? Tuco asked. I thought it was, but now I ain't so sure. I talked to the old lady Daniela this morning. She lives in the same building as Diego. She told me she saw a demon climbing into the back of a van. A demon, huh? Dwayne snorted, but his shoulders tightened. He was just as interested as Vic was. She say what kind of a demon? She say what kind of a van? Vic asked. Chevy Astro van, Tuco said immediately. White. She thought it was an older model. He pulled a slip of paper off the table and passed it to Dwayne. She tried to get a license plate, but she only saw the first 3 numbers. The detectives ran the plate back at the precinct. Partial plates were a pain in the ass. Over 1,000 Astrovans came back with those first 3 numbers. It took hours to find one that might be related to the case. "I think I've got something," said Vic. "Noah Benowitz." "Who?" Dwayne asked. Then he frowned. "Wait, Benowitz?" "The father of Isaac Benowitz," Vic elaborated. "The drive-by 3 weeks ago." Dwayne nodded slowly. "No witnesses, but it was on Danzig's turf. I guess it was Tuco's crew looking to send a message." Dwayne typed into his computer. "I'm pulling up his info." He frowned. "No criminal record. He's a little guy, Vic. I don't see him ripping anyone's arms off." "Probably not," said Vic, "but he's got a motive and a white 1989 Astrovan." He stood up and stretched. "I say we grab some coffee and go pay him a visit." Detroit was a complicated city. A lot of the time, the difference between gangland and a quiet middle-class neighborhood was just a few blocks. Such was the case with Mr. Benowitz. He had a small house about 8 blocks from Tuco's tattoo parlor. It wasn't fancy, but the neighborhood was pretty clean. There were still bars on the windows, though. Vic knocked. Nobody answered. Dwayne tried to peek through the windows, but the blinds were closed. There weren't any lights on. Vic knocked a few more times. He didn't hear anyone moving. "Looks like he's not home," said Vic. "Probably getting dinner or something," said Dwayne. "It's about that time." "Yeah," Vic's belly rumbled. He'd realized he'd skipped lunch. "Let's get some grub ourselves. We'll come back in an hour or 2. The usual argument over where to eat ensued. It was decided, as usual, by a coin toss. Dwayne won. The truth was, Vic liked Dwayne's favorite Mexican place as much as Dwayne did, but arguing for Chinese had become something of a tradition. The 2 of them were about to get back in the car when Dwayne froze. "What is it?" said Vic. Dwayne opened the rear door of the car. He reached in and pulled something out. He held it up for Vic to see. "Is that a cell phone?" asked Vic. "It ain't mine," said Dwayne. His frown deepened. "Ain't nobody been in this car but us all day." "So why would—" Vic trailed off. A terrible suspicion roused itself. "Tuco." "It probably belongs to one of his boys," Dwayne guessed. "They've been tracking us all day." "That would explain why he was so forthcoming," said Vic. Then his eyes went wide. "Shit, the plate. Son of a bitch." Dwayne's eyes widened too. "He was using us to do his legwork. We gotta go." Vic called for backup, but he didn't wait for it. He went straight for Mr. Benowitz's house, as fast as the flashing lights and reckless driving could take him. It only took 10 minutes to get there, but Vic could see it was already too late. There were 4 cars parked in front of the house. 1 Chevy Astrovan, 2 Toyota RAV4s, and a Corolla. Vic didn't need to run the plates. He was sure it was Tuco's crew. Gunshots could be heard from inside the house. Gunshots and screams. Vic radioed again, but backup was still 4 minutes out. He cursed. By mutual agreement, the detectives decided not to wait. They drew their guns and approached the house. The door had been smashed in. Vic led the way, gun ready. He froze just inside the door. The living room had been nice, once. Now it was covered in blood and bodies. Furniture had been smashed and overturned. Dead men lay scattered. Some of them were missing limbs or heads. Guns, machetes, and crosses lay near the bodies, having done their owners no good. Tuco was screaming in Latin. His gun was empty, but he swung a machete with a desperate ferocity. Again and again it sank into, "What the hell was that?" The thing was shaped like a man. It very clearly wasn't. It was made of a moist-looking grayish-brown material. Mud? Clay? It was made of clay. It was covered in blood and gore. The creature's head was a misshapen round blob, but there were a pair of holes full of burning orange light that served as eyes. It had a mouth, but no nose. Its fingers were mismatched. Its whole body looked like it had been put together by a drunk amateur sculptor. It didn't speak, but there was a noticeable thud as it stepped closer to Tuco. Tuco backed off, still hacking away at the thing. Rents and slashes appeared on the creature's body, but it didn't seem to notice. Tuco's voice got more shrill as his back hit the wall. The creature slowly drew back a fist, then shot forward with frightening speed. Tuco ducked under the blow and around the creature. He raised the machete again, but the monster whipped its arm around. The blow swatted Tuco's head clean off. "Police!" Dwayne shouted. Vic's partner stepped forward, gun trained on the monster. "Put your hands over your head." "Seriously?" Vic shot his partner an incredulous look, but he decided to back his play. He stepped sideways, his own weapon zeroed on the monster's head. Not that he thought it would do any good. "They killed my son." The voice came from somewhere down the hall. A man stepped into view. Short, older. His hair and his beard were graying and neatly trimmed. He was dressed nice. A dark suit over a white shirt, a black hat. Vic recognized the outfit. This man was a rabbi. "Are you Noah Benowitz?" Dwayne asked. Neither he nor Vic pointed their guns away from the monster. It hadn't moved since it killed Tuco, but Vic wasn't taking any chances. "Yes," said the rabbi. Dwayne hesitated. "We came here to ask you some questions." "You came because you think I'm responsible for the death of these murderers," said Noah. "I'm more concerned about the death of their families," said Vic. The rabbi nodded. There was something tired and broken behind his eyes. "The families. Yes, it wasn't supposed to happen that way." "What do you mean?" asked Vic. "I asked for vengeance," Noah explained. "I wanted them to suffer for what they did to my son. I didn't understand what that would mean." "You sent that thing after Tuco's crew," Vic guessed. "What is it?" "An ancient power," said Noah. "My people have been persecuted since before Rome was a nation. It was one of the ways we used to keep ourselves protected. A dangerous way. One we're not supposed to use anymore." "It's a golem," said Dwayne, "isn't it?" "Yes," said the rabbi. "Made from clay, given life through a shem and ancient rites." He sighed. "It was the only way to get justice." "You mean revenge," said Dwayne. "Yes," said Noah. He looked around the room, his nose wrinkled. For a moment he looked like he was going to gag. "I mean revenge." Vic and Dwayne shared a look. It was Vic that said, "Well, you definitely got revenge. Do you mind turning your golem off now?" "What?" The rabbi frowned at the monster made of clay. "Oh, yes, I should do that." The little man approached the monster. He spoke in Yiddish and reached for its mouth. The golem snatched his wrist. It squeezed. The rabbi screamed. A punch from the golem caved in the rabbi's chest. "Shit!" Dwayne opened fired. The bullet slammed into the golem, making little holes as they disappeared into the clay that formed it. Burning orange eyes turned to focus on the detective. The golem threw the rabbi aside. It stepped forward. Vic shot the thing in the eye. It didn't seem to notice. The detectives backed up, still shooting. The golem walked forward at first. As Vic reloaded his pistol, the monster broke into a sprint. It was headed for Dwayne. "No!" Vic shouted. He crashed into the monster just before it reached his partner. It was a classic football tackle. Vic hit low, trying to knock the creature's legs out from under it. He might as well have dived into a statue. Vic bounced off the monster, crashing to the ground. The creature stumbled, but it didn't fall. Burning orange eyes flicked to the falling detective. Misshapen, bloody hands reached down. Vic tried to scramble away, but he was too slow. The golem seized his head and lifted Vic off the ground. Vic was dead. He knew he was dead. He screamed his defiance and put his gun up under the monster's clay chin. He pulled the trigger as fast as he could. It was a useless, desperate gesture, but Vic would be damned if he didn't go down swinging. The gun ran empty. Vic kept screaming and pulling the trigger anyway. It took a few seconds to notice his head hadn't been crushed. Vic?" Dwayne sounded shaken, but all right. "I think you got it." "Yeah?" Vic's head was really starting to hurt. He was still hanging off the ground in the hands of the frozen monster. Yeah, that's good." The golem's mouth was hanging open. The light in its eyes was gone. Dwayne reached past Vic, prying the mouth open a little more. He reached in and pulled out a tiny rolled-up scroll, or what was left of one. At least 2 bullets had torn through it. "Damn," said Dwayne. The detective looked around the room in dismay. "How are we going to explain all this?" "Hell if I know," Vic admitted. "I got a better question. How are you going to get this damned thing to put me down?"